Hello everybody. I would like to talk to you today about the 7 churches that we read about in chapters 2 and 3 of the book of Revelation. I have to remember that Christ loves His church and He loves these 7 churches. Although Satan has done a wonderful job in destroying them and ruining them, as we will find out. Now, these 7 churches are chronological in church history. Describes church history very, very well. These 7 churches also exist somewhere in the world right now. The first church is Ephesus. And Ephesus started at Pentecost, and it lasted for 100 years. The Roman government arrested and killed every Christian they could find because they refused to worship Caesar. This is terrible. So this is a martyred church. The next church is Smyrna, which means suffering. Lasted from 100 after Christ to 314 AD. Millions were killed by 10 Roman emperors because they refused to worship the emperor. Now this church exists even today. It's a martyr church. Christians are being killed in Africa, in India, in Afghanistan. So this church is alive and well now, but it's being killed off. The next church is Pergamos, started in 314 AD and lasting to about 590 or 600. This is a pre-Catholic church. What happened here, that Emperor Constantine was on the throne and he realized we can't just kill off all the Christians, they keep multiplying. Let's join up with them. Let's make them our state church so we can benefit from the benefits that God gives to them in our government. So we made Christianity His state church, and that's called Catholic. Now what they did was they took all the pagan churches in the land and called them Christian. And all the statues around the wall to Mars and Zeus and Jupiter and all these pagan gods, we'll change those to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Oh, there's Venus, she's a girl. Let's change her to Mary. So these are very, very pagan churches. Now at that time they were celebrating pagan celebrations to Christmas and Easter. Now remember that Nimrod, at the time of Abraham, hated God, wanted to overthrow Christianity, and he created pagan religion of celebrating Easter and Christmas. Both of them are kind of pagan, drunken orgies. Well, they kept that going, and the Catholic Church said, well, yeah, we'll keep that going too. The next church is Thyatira, from 590 to 1517 AD. So, this is a full-blown Catholic church. It started Mary worship, purgatory, indulgences. It's responsible for the Dark Ages, where millions of Christians were killed during the Inquisition. They were killed because they loved the Lord Jesus Christ, they loved the Bible, and they refused to join in a pagan church. So they got arrested. Remember, the state's behind the church at this time, gives them legal authority to arrest Christians, and put on the rack and eventually killed. Well, they also enforced the practice of Easter and Christmas. Easter was in April. Now we had Christians that were obedient to the Bible and celebrated Passover. Well, he wouldn't tolerate that. History books say that they were forced to give up Passover celebrate Easter to the god Astaroth, who came down from heaven in a colorful egg, in place of Passover, and some of them resisted. History tells us that they were killed. Their blood was shed in order to force this goofy religion. Also, they celebrated Christmas in direct violation of Jeremiah chapter 10. Constantine changed the celebration for the Queen of Heaven and the sun god into Christmas so that he could put that into his church. So this is a very pagan church, still is. Now they introduced celibate clergy. This has resulted in all kinds of sexual sins, which are terrible. Now the nuns and the priests are living close together. The nuns have taken a vow of submission to the church and to the priests. They also have long robes that color up the pregnancy that may occur, and often did, and still does. Now, as a professional psychologist, I've been asked by attorneys to interview men and document the damage done to men who were altar boys as children and who were molested sexually by Catholic priests. And that's terrible. And that does an enormous amount of damage. And that church covers it all up. They just simply move the priests around from church to church. So this is a very, very wicked church, Thyatira. Now the next church, Sardis, is from 1517 to 1800. This is called the Reformation Church. It was started by two Catholic priests, Luther and Calvin, who actually studied their Bible and realized that salvation does not come by works. Salvation does not come by adherence to the Catholic Church. It comes by faith, and they preached that, and they rebuked the Catholic Church. They rebuked the Catholic Church over these matters. It's a wonder that they weren't killed. Now, they have continued many Catholic practices, including the union of church and state. The church can always use the authority given to it in state relationship. Now, they also hated and killed Bible believers that would not submit to being sprinkled as they joined the church. Bible believers read the Bible and they believe in baptism by immersion. So these people rejected the pagan church and its practices of the Reformation. As a result, Luther says, "Oh, you love to be immersed? I'll immerse you." So he wraps them all together, marches them into the river, drowns them all. This church also hates Jews. Is the father of anti-Semitism, it seems like. Is father of Hitler's documented hatred towards the Jewish people. So these churches, even though they exist today, Presbyterian, Lutheran, are really spiritually ill. Now the next church mentioned is Philadelphia. Now this church exists right now. It's true Bible-believing, Bible-practicing church. It supports missions all over the world. This church is going to be raptured. We know this because God promised this church that He will keep them from the hour of temptation or trial that's going to come on the whole world. So this is a good church. And I encourage each one to join it if you have one in your area. My experience that is still influenced by the Reformed theology. They reject the Bible feasts. They reject dietary laws. They practice the pagan feasts of Christmas and Easter in spite of Jeremiah 10. The next church describes Christ as standing outside, the door's locked against him, knocking on the door, trying to fellowship with this church. That's called a Laodicea. This is a recent church. In the last few years, it seems that it has developed, but there's churches like this all over the United States now. But Christ is locked out. They reject the gospel. They reject Bible teaching. They would admit that they believe in it, but they don't want to preach it because it's too negative. They teach self-aggrandizement, self-promotion. That's just like teaching the pride of life. Humanism. Self-worship. So this church exists, but it's not evangelical and it doesn't preach the Bible at all. Now the members of this church are going to go through the tribulation. They're going to miss the rapture, they're going to be left behind. Tribulation comes. They're going to be offered a choice by Antichrist. Either take the mark of the beast, buy and sell with the mark, or become a tribulation saint. That's a terrible choice to have to make. So this, in summary, is the review of the 7 churches in chapters 2 and 3. Interesting study. Very sad study. Because you see how Satan has infiltrated each one of these churches, except the martyr churches, and the Philadelphian church. But he's infiltrated the Reformation churches, the Catholic churches, and other churches. So, hope this is helpful to you. Keep reading our Bible and keep praying. The rapture's during our lifetime, I do believe. See you next week with further study in the book of Revelation. The Lord bless. Bye-bye.